So today, I'd like to go over the target marketing strategy. And again, I taught some of this stuff. I taught all of these topics that we've been talking about in the last few weeks or months, actually now, at the college level. And at the university level, these topics are, designed for working at larger companies, but they are completely applicable to what we do. And there's a specific process for creating a market winning strategy that is, it's called a lot of things, but I call it target marketing. I'm going to talk to you about how you go through this, and then we'll give you a few pointers as a startup, and maybe we'll just open the discussion up about how you do it. But before I get into that, let's start with a poll. I think we've got the poll ready.
Yeah, let me set it up here. All right, let me know when you see it.
I see it.
Awesome.
So yep, how did you segment your market, whether it be you've already done market segmentation or you're planning, you have a plan in your business plan to do it. A lot of times this is in our pitch, with the market segment that we're going to be targeting. So which methodology did you use? Geographic, demographic, psychographic, behavior, by behavior, none of these? Or what the heck are you talking about, Sal? So I'll give you guys a chance to answer these. I think this is multiple choice. So if you've done it by several, pick a few, and we'll see how that works out. I think we spelled psychographics wrong, but that's all right. It's with a PH. You have music here too. We could have the Jeopardy music.
Yeah, that was a pretty good suggestion there.
Jeopardy music during the polling.
Right. I think that would be a good one. All right, I think we're pretty good here.
All right, this will help me with the talk. So let's take a look.
All right, I'm going to end the polls in 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. Share results.
All right. Okay, so 15%. What the heck are you talking about? Good. Then we have 15% of you. I'm going to teach you about this stuff, so be some good content. 31% didn't use any of these. That's interesting. That's kind of higher than I thought. A third. So basically, almost half either don't know what I'm talking about or didn't use any of these and that's not a problem if you did it some other way. But it looks like the winner is demographically. Okay, that's good. And then the second place is geographically, with by behavior and psychographics the least. Okay, good. So I think today will be informative. Let me just take a picture of this before you put that down. It helps me with this talk. All right, thank you. So let's get into this. Okay, the target marketing process is in total a 4-step process that you should be taking. And these 4 steps are broken into 2 categories. Okay, the first grouping is you're selecting the customers to serve. And then the second category is you're choosing a value proposition. And so let's go through these steps. I'm going to talk about them a little bit. And then we're going to focus today on the first one. And we'll leave targeting, differentiation, positioning for future discussions. But let's focus on the first step of the target marketing process today. And let me go through these at a high level for you and let you know that let's just say you today were hired at Costco and they told you, we want you to be our marketing, we want you to work in marketing, and we'd like to increase our business. You could pull this out and start moving down this process verbatim with these 4 steps, understanding they're grouped into 2 categories, and you would be treated as a marketing professional. In fact, anybody that has their MBA with a marketing major or any sort of marketing professional, they will get what you are doing in these 4 steps. So this is amongst marketing professionals, this is common knowledge, and this is the way we operate. Okay. So here you're getting really the way. Now you can break off of this way, but they always say, before you break the rules, know the rules, right? Beethoven knew the rules of composing opera, of composing symphonies. He knew those rules, and then he broke them when he wrote the 5th Symphony, for example, and he started with da 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 da. That broke some rules. In fact, he repeated it in the beginning, and he used that as a motif, but he knew the rule before he broke it. And that's what makes him genius. So I want you to know the rules, and then we can break them. So here's how it works. The first thing that you do is you take your market and you break it up into segments. And we're going to talk about those segments. In fact, you took a poll on them, but you break your market up into segments first, and you get down to the nitty-gritty. Then you select which segment you're going to target first and second and third, but you actually eliminate most of the segments and you focus on a few. And I'm going to talk to you a little bit today about that process, because I see tons of pitches and no one is doing it right. No one of you that have ever pitched and no one I've ever seen is doing this right. And I'm going to get into it today and explain to you how you can do better on your pitch. Now, the key point here is when you target, you're being very specific for very specific reasons. So first you segment, then you pick. And when you pick, you're doing it based on how your goals as a startup. And a lot of times your goal as a startup is to make as much money as possible, as quickly as possible, make as much impact as possible, as quickly as possible. Somebody needs to mute. Somebody needs to mute. So,
Okay.
Targeting is very key. We'll go through that next week. Actually the week after next. Then what you do is you think about that market, that target market you picked, and you look at your product, you look at your offering, and you ask yourself, how do we differentiate from all other options? So for example, if you're, selling ice cream and you have special flavors that nobody offers, your differentiation would be where boutique ice cream, no one offers these flavors. That's how we're different. So you go into deep analysis about how you're different from how the customer can solve their problem in another way. And then you take that differentiation set, which is usually a set of things, and you create a marketing campaign that positions you in the customer's head as that product, as that differentiated product, and you create a convincing, concise, consistent campaign. So these are the steps. The first 2 steps where you actually segment and target, you're selecting which customers to serve. The second 2 steps, you're choosing a value proposition based on the target that you created. Now, I know this may seem simplistic, and I know this may seem obvious, but most people don't go through these 4 steps in earnest. And we're going to go through the next few weeks. I'm going to teach you each of these steps. And today we're going to focus on segmentation. So we did the survey, and here are the markets. This is the way that you can segment your markets, and you combine these. This is not a one, you don't just pick one. So a lot of you probably picked a few of these categories. That's the correct way to do it. Now I'll do an example. But segmentation is defined as dividing your market into segments of buyers with distinct needs, characteristics, and/or behaviors. Okay. That's the definition of segmentation. That's what you're doing. And so let's look at some ways that we can segment. Now, the obvious easiest one, which was the winning one in our poll, the second one's our winning one. The second place one in our poll is geographic. Now, geographic may seem, why would I limit myself to geography? We'll talk about that. But geographic can be, a country, a region of a country, the Northwest of America, the Midwest of a state, specific state or state, specific counties or cities. Okay, those are the typical ways that you see people doing these. But you could also break this up, believe it or not, by things like climate. Okay, maybe you sell hot chocolate and you want to focus on cold climates. Okay. Population densities. Maybe you sell something that's more appealing to people in rural areas as opposed to city areas. So population density. Believe it or not, these are also geographic descriptions. And I've never seen anyone in a pitch put up these really sort of specific climate, population, density, et cetera, type. And believe it or not, you might think, well, if I did that in my pitch, wouldn't the investor kind of feel like, well, hold on, why are you excluding all these other people? Why are you being so specific? They actually won't think that as long as you have a good reason based on how your product can be targeted to that group. And in fact, the more specific you are, the more, the more targeted you are, the better that comes across in a pitch because you've thought through how you're going to create a market as quickly as possible. You could always expand to the other areas later. Okay, so that's the second place winner in our poll. The first place was demographic. And this is the typical thing: age, gender, income, occupation, education, generation, Gen X, Gen Y, et cetera. And so this is the way most of us might think about, and a lot of products lend themselves. For example, if you have a match, if you're creating an app that does, dating, you're going to grab onto a certain age group. I mean, maybe your app is specific to seniors. So then your age group would be obvious, and that would be how you would break it up. But you might think about education level, occupation, you might consider income level, et cetera, at the beginning. And so you could add these to your target market. Now, ones that were not really answered in our poll highly, maybe because they're a little bit less obvious, but extremely important, extremely useful are the next two. So psychographic is based on things like personality, introverts, extroverts, believe it or not, lifestyle, people that are into fitness, people that are into, online video games, people that are into certain hobbies. And it may be something interesting, like maybe a hobby, stamp collecting, actually is a good group for you because your product lends itself to that, right? So you have to think through these things from a persona point of view and then apply that to your product in order to see if that's a better group. Now think about it. If you decided stamp collectors are perfect demographic or a perfect target market for your product, think about how easy it would be to advertise to that group. Okay, that there's stamp collection websites, there's stamp collection magazines, there's stamp collection events, you know, so you could easily target that group, and actually for less money because you're being very narrow. Someone else needs to mute.
I got it.
So that's psychographics. And then the last one I want to talk about, and I'll go through an example of these, is behavioral. This one also is overlooked a lot. And it has to do a little bit with kind of looking at your customers, but certain occasions, holidays, you know, events, March Madness. We just had March Madness as an occasion. So if you think about when you advertise, let's face it, let's say that your product is a basketball, you know, shoe or a basketball shoes accessory. You might pick March Madness as when you pound this into the ground for everybody to buy. Believe it or not, fast food companies do this a lot. For example, around the time that the Super Bowl is, pizza, fast food pizza advertising goes way up. That's not a coincidence. That's a behavioral target market, okay? So consider things like occasions. And then if you think about the habits of your customers, for example, the benefits that they're looking for, or the usage rate. And really what usage rate means, you're looking for people that, let's just say that we do the stamp collecting, or even people that buy pizza, that order pizza out, right? Like people that order pizza more than once a week, or at least once a week, that's a usage rate. And so those people would be a good person to market to. If you had, let's say, a DoorDash type app, right? Those would be a perfect demographic, believe it or not. So people, you know, habits, usage, etc. So what I'm trying to do here is broaden your thinking about how you segment your markets. And let's take a look at some examples. So this is a typical pitch. I just heard this pitch yesterday, and it was very good. But look at this is how we all tend to do it. First of all, look at the market opportunity. Okay, the market size is 32 billion. Okay, it's not segmented down. And if you look at the segments, business, academic, legal, broad stroke, there's no thought here. And I'm not saying this is a bad pitch. This is actually one of the better pitches. And when I asked the question, how are you segmenting? I got a better answer, actually. And so they had thought about bringing this down, but think about it. This is like this is just casting such a broad net that there's really no strategy for maximizing their customer base quickly, right? It's just sort of legal people would use this, medical people, people in the entertainment business, etc. So if you take a look at your pitch deck, are you, you know, your TAM, Samsung with the opportunity and, you know, the target market and how much money that's worth, are you being too broad? Or are you doing something like this? Now look at this. This is my fake product called the Smart Mailbox. And I'm doing an example of how my pitch deck might say how we're targeting. So the early adopter target market, we picked Minnesota. Minnesota happens to be a place where the congestion is not super high. People actually own homes in Minnesota more than living in apartments. So we're targeting people that are homeowners in a large city that where there are a lot of homes, not a lot of apartments. If we would have picked, for example, San Francisco, there's a lot of apartment living, not a lot of homes, but way more in Minnesota, it turns out. So we're going to pick Minnesota. Families, we're going to pick families because they tend to get more stuff sent to them. People are busy, they're busier. There's usually two people working. They don't have time. We picked families and homeowners. And we're going to target 1% of the Minnesota families that are homeowners. And there's 2,500 of those. And there's actually not 2,500, it's 250,000 of those. And we're going to capture 1% of that market. And if we capture 1% of that market, and our product is $499 a year, $499 a year, the smart mailbox subscription, that's 1.2 million ARR. That's our early adopter target market. And I just gave you the reasons for my segmenting that specifically. Now that's step one. Then what we're going to do is take that same demographic, that same target segment, and go after 10 other cities. And I have a list of them. In year two, that's $12 million ARR. We're only wanting to capture 1% of those 10 cities. So we don't have to capture a lot. And by the way, we're going to be in year two making 12 million. Now there is a very narrow, specific, reasoned out market segmentation. Okay. And then I would get into the next 4 steps, then the other 3 steps of the process in my pitch. In a way, I would show you how we're different. I would show you how we positioned ourselves for these folks exactly and why we're going to own this. Okay. Now, when you guys watch pitches on Monday night, we have our Monday night open pitch night. Watch how this one slide is too broad and not reasoned out like I just did. And it's the reason we do this, the reason people do this is because they're not wanting to show that they're eliminating customers. But that's a mistake in my opinion. And in fact, it's a mistake in the opinion of anybody working even at McDonald's or Costco or any of these other large companies, because you got to segment. That's the step one. So that's an example of how you might see a pitch deck done differently should you actually follow this process and use the segmentation steps that we had. So I'm going to give you a challenge. Take each of these sections and try to break your market into them and try to be creative, like we were talking about: hobbies, lifestyles, usage rate, occasions, etc. Try to be creative, thinking about how this best fits your product, and see how narrow you can get on each of these segment types. And you'd be surprised, for example, like I just said, the weird stamp collect, we're going to go after people that collect stamps because they have the same habits as what's needed for our product, how this will reduce your marketing spend. Okay, because when you narrow, you pay less. And you'd be surprised how this kind of wakes up investors. Investors would be like, why did you pick Minnesota? Interesting. Why Minnesota? Oh, here are the reasons. We went through the demographics. We looked at all of the large cities over this much. We wanted to find those that had home ownership over apartments, which is why, I mean, it's a great conversation for you to have with an investor, and they can see that you're following this process. So I challenge you to do that. And what we'll do next time is I'll go through, next time we're up to bat and we all get together, I'm going to talk about targeting after segmentation. So we'll go into that. And then at a future one, I'll talk about differentiation and positioning. This process is a whole process that is, several, I would say 5 chapters in this book, that the marketing book that I teach from, but it's a whole thing. In fact, in my final, I had them pick a company and go through. I didn't say what the steps were. So in the final, I just told the students, I want you to pick a company, pick a product at a company that's out there and known. And I want you to go through the 4 steps of target marketing. And I didn't say what they were, so that they had to remember segmentation, targeting, differentiation, positioning, and do each of them on the final. Okay, so this is something that is taught. It is the standard practice, and it's something that you should each be doing. All right. So I'll open it up now for questions, and we don't have that many people. So if you just want to unmute and ask, I think that's fine. Hugh, if you see some in the chat, if somebody wants to jump in, we can.
Yeah, can I ask a question, please?
Mm-hmm.
Yes, thank you, Sal. In 3 minutes, right, you have to cover many things. So how, I mean, a well-thought segmentation, I think, will take more than probably shoot up on other sections on the pitch. So, but I can see the value because it shows that you're thinking, right?
Mm-hmm.
What would you be or consider a good time in the from the 3 minutes? How much should the segmentation steal from the total?
Yep, good question. So the key here would be if I were using that slide on mine, and I would, because all of us are going to have an opportunity slide. So you have sort of the problem, the solution, the opportunity, the team, right? And so one of your slides is opportunity. And I wouldn't dig too deep into it during the presentation. In fact, it's kind of fun to show that slide and say, our early adopter campaign is in Minnesota, homeowners, blah, 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 which will get us $1.2 million ARR. Then we're going to expand to 10 more cities, which will get us 12 million ARR. So huge opportunity here, huge growth, very specific, and then move to the next slide. Now people might be going, well, why didn't you explain the Minnesota thing during the pitch? Because I want them to ask me. That's okay. So I would say you don't have to go into why you picked Minnesota, for example, during the pitch proper, but just be prepared during the Q&A to give the specifics. That'll help.
You. Oh, thank you.
Yep. Good question.
Hey, Sal, can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
Hey, this is Sanjeev, and thanks for bringing the segmentation slide. That was my scribby slide from yesterday's pitch. So great feedback. Completely makes sense. Now, quick question on that. Since ours is a little different, where we have been for a couple of years and we have pay-as-you-go model. Now, customers are coming from different segments, right? I mean, we don't restrict it. Now, in that case, where you have some universities, some coming from the legal side, some coming from the podcast, how to better represent that, like from the opportunity perspective?
Yep. Yeah, with your presentation, which I liked, by the way, I thought there was an opportunity because you already have customers, right?
Correct. 50,000.
So, yeah. So you have the best situation because when I asked you what the target market, what you were having success in, you said education, right?
Correct.
Okay. So you could literally you could raise money and show how that money is going to turn into huge profit just in education and get the investor excited and then say, oh, cherry on top, all these others are out there too. Does that make sense?
Yes, that makes sense. That definitely makes sense.
So I just feel like if the investor sees that a little bit of money goes a long way in an already established market, and man, look at the growth there. And by the way, we already have, think about it, you have customer testimonials, you have experience with it, you know that it's successful, you know where you would advertise, right? It's the biggest bang for the buck. And then the other ones are the cherry on top. You could say, then we're going to go specifically after and then make it super specific. Legal, corporate law, whatever it is, right? And these are the reasons. And guess what? That's 12 million ARR there. Now we need the money to market that. And I got to get these three, certifications, which we're going to get. That's part of the plan. If we go after legal, that's the plan. Now you've got investors thinking two things. One is that's a lot of money and it's low hanging fruit. And if I invest in these guys, they're going to own that. And owning a market's huge. And then I don't like legal. I saw that he had, some other industry on there, and I have connections there. I'm going to tell him, if you go after this other market, I've got connections there. So let's talk. See how that's a better conversation?
Yes.
Okay.
No, that completely makes sense. Thanks for the
Okay.
feedback. Appreciate
Yeah.
it.
Beautiful. Thank you for letting me use your slide.
Absolutely. Anytime. I'm glad.
Yeah. Yeah. And I did ask you that question during the presentation. So I liked your answer.
Thank
It's
you.
just, I think it's more powerful. Remember, preempting, all of you, preempting it with just a quick little thingy like that, had that been on there, is a beautiful way. Whenever you hear questions, try to preempt them in your talk the next time. So keep an eye on the questions.
Thank you, Sal.
Yep. Do we have anybody in the chat? That had questions, Hugh?
Nah, not necessarily. Just a statement, not necessarily a question. And William asked his. All right. Do we have any more questions for Sal here?
It doesn't have to be on marketing. It doesn't have to be on target marketing.
Oh, I have then a tough question, Sal. I think it's tough because I have no idea how to get to this. How do I value my product? I mean, I need money. I worked 10 years in this new technology, but now it's time to start making money. So we're going to build a product, right? But how do I know what the market is worth, or what is this product going to be worth? Sorry
Yes.
for this out of ball question.
That's a good question. I wonder if so there's two ways to do this, is bottom up, top down. And I would do both. So the way bottom up works, let's just start there, is kind of the way I showed on the slide for Smart Mailbox. I just said there are 1.2, there are 1,200 people that fit the category that I'm going to go after in my early adopters. I'm going to charge this much money per month. And let me do the math. Now that revenue is X and it's conservative. So it was 1.2 million per year. And so I can then build all of my plans and marketing and everything off of that from a bottoms up perspective. Top down is the way you see most people do it, which I think you need to do both. Is right now the market size for this industry, let's just say, people online, the number of people that purchase, the amount of money spent for online delivery is X, and therefore, in the United States, which is going to be where we're going to target this, and we want to capture X percentage of that market. And so you start with a large number, and you could just Google these things a lot of times. I use a company called Statista, Statista. They sell data. A lot of their data is free, so some of it's free, but there's a bunch of statistics companies out there that you could look up like that and buy this information. A lot of times if you Google it, you'll see someone has done a market analysis, and I would get a couple of them and combine them. Always write your sources down and do it from the top down, and then compare the two. Typically, the top down one's going to be too high of a valuation or market value. The bottom up might be a little low because you're being very, depending on how specific you are, but I like to be super specific. And then it's nice to show both values are just kind of meet in the middle. Does that help?
Oh, plenty. Thank you.
Okay. Remember, yeah, go ahead, John.
Yeah, you know, with I'm just getting into this as far as getting the information of how to make a pitch and everything. And when I've been to a number of them already, the one thing I keep on getting more apprehensive about is the fact that when you do the pitch and you are looking for investors, the majority of the feedback I get, or I've been told, is that the angel and or venture capitalists are basically looking for, you know, anywhere from 10 to 20 times the amount that they're investing. And they're looking for companies, of course, with fast growth or actually active in doing stuff, where I'm one who's basically been trying to get funding to just get the startup going, because I'm in new tech, green tech. When I started, green wasn't a trendy, and that's kind of aging me. But then the idea is that the companies, or what has been told, is that the monies that they put in, when you look for an exit, as they all ask for as an exit in these things, is that you're selling your company. I don't want to sell my company. I don't want to go to an IPO and give equity shares. And so what do you do on that point? And I don't know any, I don't have any real friends who are rich. And honestly, you know, I've pretty much been looking for a single woman who's rich, be interested in a very lucrative business proposition. I married for love. Now I want married for money. So
You should have started the other way.
Okay, yeah, yeah, married for love. Okay, a couple
but
things.
she's gone. So
Okay. Well, you know, I feel like what you just said is great to hear, and for everybody to hear, because people hear this a lot. And it's not, so you're not alone, not uncommon. And so a couple things. One is, remember, angel investors are people that do want a return on investment. And they would like that return on investment, you know, let's just say in a few years, right? Is because you think about it, an investor has options. The investor could put their money in the stock market. They could buy Bitcoin. They could buy an apartment and rent, you know, get rent. There's all sorts of options a person with money has. And there's also a bunch of reasons someone invests. Some people invest in startups because they like to be a part of the startup. They like their concept. They like their idea. But in the end, someone that is an investor is going to need a return. So that's kind of what you're running up against.
oh yeah.
And let's face it, if you asked an investor, would you rather have a company that returns 10x in 1 year, or a company that's doing a great mission for the world, but doesn't really know how they're going to exit, and it's probably not going to be 10x? Which one would they pick? They would always, you know, say, well, you know, as an investor.
Well, I'm biased. I know I have a company that's going to return more than 10x. It's just, and it is good for the world. It's just that it's kind of steep to try and get into something to do it for $100,000 and then within 1 year give $1 million back. I don't think it can be done unless you've already got the money, but then you wouldn't be on this to ask for money in the first place. So I'm, you know, that's where I'm trying to get it out of it. And I want to do it, but I don't want to do it because I've been on so many different pitch or classes or webinars, whether these guys are making their pitch, makes sense. But then when it comes time to the amounts that they're looking for and how they want to exit, the guys that I see majority of them don't look like they want to sell their business. They're just getting into business. It is a startup and it is a growing company. They are selling a marketable thing, but you know, it seems awfully steep. And again, like I said, there isn't anybody that most of the guys that are coming onto this are looking for the fact that they don't have friends that got money, or they've kind of either tried or they haven't had success on crowdsourcing. And so this is something that seems appealing, but then again, it's awfully you know, kind of a treacherous field that you're in. I mean, to do that, it's understandable the investor wants their money back, but you know, it's the little guy that's trying to make the money that's suffering for it. You know, I don't know.
No,
I guess I'm coming from a different world.
no, you're not. This is very common. And so the talk today is a good example of how you can help yourself. For example, if you segmented down to a very specific group that were very easy to reach and only needed a certain piece of the benefit of your product, then what you can do is narrow your product, make your product smaller so it's less expensive to build, and reduce your market aim so it's easier to market to that group. And they call it guerrilla marketing. There's even a book called Guerrilla Marketing. So the more you do that, the easier it is for you to raise less, to get established, to get and then you're really looking for less money, and maybe there'll be a larger group of investors that see the bigger benefit for what you're trying to do.
Yeah, that's exactly what I've done. I mean, when I started this clean energy system, I was going for power and propulsion and on vehicles. But then everybody and their mother, now that has become a trend, and we are trying to reduce our carbon footprint and or emissions. The idea that Audi, GM, Ford, Toyota, Tesla, and all these people have already gotten the motor or going for the green, no emissions motor. So I've basically pulled my engine or motor system out, and I'm going to be targeting the marine, marine equipment or marine tech. And the idea behind that is because I live here in Hawaii, and we have an issue, of course, with the debris and plastics coming up on our oceans, and it's becoming a real nuisance. The market itself, or the industry itself, is going to be a $4.5 trillion industry by 2030. And that's based on what is going to be made to be recyclable. Mm-hmm. My issue is we got a lot of shit that's already out there in the ocean. We got to clean up, and nobody's doing anything about it. And so that's where I'm targeting, is to make a green engine for vessels. And then because here in the islands, fuel is so expensive, look what's happening now. We've been having that problem for long before you guys on the mainland have had the consideration that fuel is expensive. And the deep sea fishermen can't go out and fish to make money because it's too costly to buy the fuel. I've got an engine, doesn't use fuel, and really is limitless. And
then
I don't have the money.
Yeah, the other thing I'll say that can help, so you're doing the right stuff. The other thing that can help is the talk that I gave on channels. So a lot of us tend to market our ideas to the bottom layer, the consumer. And if you want, come on Monday and watch the pitches. Almost everyone is aiming their startup at a consumer, but there's so many levels. There's the person that makes the engine. There's the person that is upstream from that. There's the person that is the designer. There's the company, there's so many little areas in between companies. Like, I'll just give you an example. I'm not saying yours could do this, but if you came up with an idea that's licensable to a company that already does this, and you put your little thing together and you created a secret formula. Some people, they don't say, they let you license it, or you patent something, or you copyright something, and then you turn around and license it to somebody that already does this, just making an example, not saying you do this, then think about how much easier this is for anybody listening, because you moved up the chain and didn't think about a fisherman, for example. So consider these, everyone is because we're so used to being consumers, everyone's looking, oh, I want my product to be famous and to be, I'm going to market right directly to the man and woman on the street. Think upstream and look for opportunities between channels.
Well, I did that and I like that. It's just that nobody's really doing it as far as my particular engine system. And it's a simple engine to put together. And the idea that I'd like to do it and become the manufacturer is that I can maintain the quality control and then basically franchise that design pattern to 4 other companies to be developed, and they can service their market in their area. And it's just easy, I think, an easier way to allow my licensing the design pattern, and then setting up a factory that can encompass a lot of stuff that we all go green, all sustainable, and basically cover the entire gambit that we're going to need for the future and our children's children.
But remember the difference between a dream and a reality. Something that, I have businesses that are making money. Do you think that the way I did that with not raising a lot of money is by being creative about the beginning of my company? So for example, if you went to a company that makes the steering systems for most major boats, they already build stuff for marine equipment, and you went and you linked in with that person and said, I have an idea, this is what it would be. Is there somebody there interested in? They might invest in you. They might go, you know what, we need to expand our line. We only make the steering systems. That sounds good. I could take over the engine. And you made a relationship and they invested in you and you came to you went upstream. I'm just making this up, by the way.
No.
You know best. You compromised a little because we all want our products to be high quality. We want to, and you ultimately, let's just say you would then turn into the manufacturer later once you got up and running and kicking butt and they, were part of your team. So be creative, everyone, about going upstream, and you have to compromise a little bit on sort of the goal to get going.
Well, when you said that, it just kind of dawned on me. There's a little saying that says a plan without action is a daydream. Action without a plan is a nightmare. Yeah. So, I guess I'm having sleepwalk nightmares here. I'm doing the action, making the plans and doing the action. It's just that everyone has their obstacles. In the islands here, we have a monopolized power grid, and of course, the way everything is set up, everything is set for the corporate markets that already are making money, and the financing are dedicated to make money. Most of it is focused on tourism. Tourism has been shot over here for over 30 years, but nobody notices that. So I don't know. I better let somebody else go talk. I'm going to talk your ear off. And shut down here. But thank you so much. There is good stuff to take out of everything, and I do. Everything's a learning process.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Mahalo. Good example. You're not alone. Anyone else?
I have a quick question if you have a moment.
Marie.
Wonderful. So when you're interviewing users for this different usability, what would you say are the main things that investors want to know when they're reading user reports? So like how engaged the user is, how long aside, if I actually get to talk to the user beyond like the Google Analytics I would normally get on them, if I actually had them fill out like a form on Notion, what would different things that they could say be of interest to an investor?
Yep. So I think the biggest thing is, if you didn't use my product, what would you have done? And why is that inferior?
Okay.
Why is mine better? Why did you pick mine over what you could have done? That right there is a beautiful, if you had stats on that, then that is actionable data, because it's part of the decision-making process for picking you. That'd be my number one. Any other questions? Good question. I think it's good to get user information, and remember, this is part of this whole target marketing, is understanding whether you're doing it right. And remember, if you talk to your customers, it's best to have a conversation with them if you can, or early adopters. And remember, the first answer isn't always the correct answer. So for example, if I used to ask our customers, why do you shopping for compliance, regulatory compliance software? And a lot of times they say, well, because we get fined if we don't comply. And so that's why we're shopping for compliance software. And, we saw your demo and we want to buy it. If I stopped there, then I'd be advertising, you're going to get fined and you don't want to avoid fines and you want to comply. But that wasn't the real reason. They picked us. The reason they picked us was because, and I think I told this story before, but it's good to repeat it, is because our software was easy to configure, and the person we were selling to and typically sold to wasn't technical. And they were embarrassed that they weren't technical, and they picked our product because it seemed easy to configure and would embarrass them in front of IT because they had picked a product they couldn't configure. So had I stopped at the first answer, I wouldn't have known. What I really should have been promoting was, if you want to have control over your software and not need to program, you should pick us. So the first answer is not always the truth, that people have personal reasons for selecting your product that may go beyond the obvious. And you want that. You want to understand that.
Should I ask what their technical availability is, or their technical proficiency is then? Is the second question.
I mean, you can ask anything you want on your survey, because that can get to your demographic. That can get to your segmenting, right?
Okay.
So yeah, absolutely. I mean,
And we're going to have that problem too. They're going to be embarrassed that because we're advertising that you don't need coding experience, right? So it has to be, you have to account for that somehow.
exactly. And so, for example, on that one, Ree, your product helps build apps for people that aren't specifically mature in their coding.
Yeah.
So check it out. If you go online and you look at people signing up for classes on coding, especially on the online courses, that's your demographic. They're people that are out there trying to learn C++. And there's all these platforms online that do that. And there's actually all these YouTube channels that help people to code.
Yeah.
And if your ad came up right at the beginning of an ad that talked about how to code in C++, the person might go, wait a minute, I don't even need this guy, this YouTube thing. I can go right and do it with this product. Boom. All right, I think we're at the end, Hugh. Are you on mute?
Yes. Yeah. It's 6:30 or what, 4:30 your time?
Yep, 4:30, 6:30 your time.
Yes. All right, everyone. Thank you for joining us. See you on Thursday for those that will be joining the open demo day. That's 9 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. You guys have a good one.
Everybody, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Have a great one, guys.
All right, have a great one.